What is the craziest location I've ever scouted? People always ask me this. If you haven't already, I put out a video a couple weeks ago talking about exactly what I do as a location scout. I highly suggest you go over and check out that. It'll give a little more context to this video. So I've worked on a lot of shows, over 25 different shows, movies, and each show has sort of their different style and different set of locations, but a lot of them, in a lot of ways, are very similar. There's not a lot of crazy locations in most shows, unless you're watching Fast and the Furious or Star Wars or Game of Thrones, something that has something that's exotic and has a really interesting, crazy look and is difficult to find. So for the most part, some of the locations that I may scout for, say, a show like Blindspot would be similar to some of the locations that I would then scout for a show like FBI Most Wanted. There's definitely some overlap and reoccurrences, but not always the most crazy, unique types of locations. So it is an interesting question when people ask something like this. In 2019, I worked on an Apple TV show called Little America. It was one of their first shows. I think they had 3 shows on the platform when they first released. Every single episode was a different story. We actually shot all of it in New Jersey, but there were episodes that took place in Oklahoma. There was one that took place in Utah. One had scenes that were in Massachusetts. But we spent a lot of time looking throughout New Jersey trying to find these different terrains, these different states, so that we could help cheat New Jersey for any of these other states, which was a very challenging thing, but it was a lot of fun as well. And I got to scout a lot of really cool places on that show. It was really cool to be able to get to see all these different types of locations that I think became iconic within the show. Now, the story I'm going to tell about the craziest location I've ever scouted, I actually didn't even get to scout it, but just the ability to clear and get this location was something that was a huge accomplishment for my career and something I can't even believe I was able to do. So in one of the episodes, 90% of the entire story took place on an Alaskan cruise ship. The first day on this show, I was trying to figure this out, how we could film on a cruise ship, never mind an Alaskan cruise ship. So I called around to all the major cruise lines and basically tried to figure out how we could charter a Carnival cruise or something of a similar size. And number one, it was very expensive. And number two, I think they needed 2 years advance notice. So this was never gonna happen. Eventually, we got to talking about whether or not we could sort of coexist on a cruise ship with a bunch of people that were actually on a cruise, which I've done this before. I've shot at a water park where the park was open, or grocery stores where people were still able to go to certain aisles and stuff like that. So this wasn't something that was super out of the ordinary, just a very unique location to have to do this at. So as I was sort of trying to find a cruise line that would be willing to work with us on this, I also was trying to work with the cruise port in Bayonne. And this was a whole other sort of process, and we would have owed a location fee to them as well. And so I was sort of trying to figure out the best way to go about it. Maybe the cruise port could get me in touch with Royal Caribbean. That was all way too complicated, so we had to go a different route. So then I started researching movies and TV shows that took place on cruise ships. There was a movie with Kelsey Grammer and Kristen Bell called Like Father, and it was basically an ad for Royal Caribbean or Carnival, whichever cruise ship they were on. So that wasn't, again, a route that I could necessarily go. I did find out that this TV show, The Romanoffs, had a similar episode, and eventually I found this guy, Captain Ken. Shout out to Captain Ken. He was the savior of this episode. I called him. He couldn't have been nicer. He had done this before, and he was the boat guru. He basically was brokering boats for TV shows and movies, and he knew how to do it. And so it turns out Captain Ken was in West Palm Beach, which is nowhere near New Jersey, obviously. I had to ask him a bunch of questions. How much money would it be for us to charter the boat and bring it up to New Jersey? How much would it be for us to charter the boat and shoot down in Florida? And then eventually, how much would it be for us to coexist with a cruise that was happening? Essentially, this boat was a smaller gambling cruise that went from West Palm to the Bahamas, and it was a 2-day cruise. So we ended up going out on 2-day cruises, and I won't reveal the number, but the cost for us to bring the boat up to New Jersey was in the millions, and the cost for us to shoot and coexist on this boat with the actual cruise happening around us was significantly less. So I presented this to my location manager, and he said, "Sounds great. I think that's going to be our boat." And unfortunately, I had 2 location managers on this show. One of them coincidentally had a trip to Disney at the same time. and he was the one that ended up scouting the boat. So I did not get to go to Florida on a scout trip by myself, but it was an incredible experience being able to do all that legwork, and I feel like I grew significantly as a scout just by making that happen. So of course, I didn't really get the credit for it, so just bragging about it here. That's pretty much it. The most craziest thing I've ever scouted, or I guess cleared, I didn't even get to scout it, but to talk about that story all the time. Scouting is an investigative endeavor, and sometimes when you are looking for those crazy locations, it takes a little while for you to figure out how you're gonna make it work, but when you do, and it works out, it's the best feeling in the world. I probably have a few more stories like this, so if you like what you heard, drop a comment down below if you want me to do more like this. I hope you can give the video a like if you found some sort of value from it, and please subscribe to the channel if you don't already. I'm gonna have more videos like this on sound and audio, recording, music, and as always, ice cream. We'll see you next time.